Okay, so we are here with Mr. John Lund Jr. from Lund Racing. I wanted to get him on. We've been talking about interviewing each other or interviewing you, getting on the show because we've been busy with a lot of stuff. World Cup, S650. There's a couple of things that you guys have been working on the shop. Can't really mention stuff yet, like hardware stuff. So now I think it's a good time to update the people, give them a state of the union kind of situation. So what I want to start talking about is World Cup. Obviously, everyone knows that, Lund Racing won the Street Fighter event, but talk about what your expectations were, because you guys had that car apart. Like, it wasn't even together, 2 weeks leading up to World Cup?
Yeah, I would say probably 4 weeks out. Like, it was, when did we start? I think it was FL2K. So that's when we got the engine that weekend or that week of FL2K, because we really wanted to make FL2K with it to kind of get redemption for the car last year. And because we really needed it. And that didn't happen. So then it was kind of just full steam ahead trying to make World Cup. And we kind of knew that going into it, knowing the timeline was getting pushed kind of hard with the engine being assembled in time. So we, the car had no motor, no trans. And basically my dad had to engineer the dry sump system, which was kind of like out of the car on the engine stand.
Right.
And then kind of eyeball that it was going to fit in the car, because we couldn't really do that. Maybe if we had like a dummy engine, we could have done it beforehand. Maybe
did we not have like a long block in there that he was just kind of trying to piece stuff together?
Yeah. I mean, it was like that was more for the turbo kit, and we didn't really think like, let's put the pump on the motor and run the lines and make everything.
Right.
Hindsight 2020 says that we probably should have done that, because you could put the thing together on the stand, and then when you go to drop it in, you're like, well, crap, this isn't going to fit. So then it turned into like having to change lines, and then it turned into like, after firing the motor, there was leaks. So it's just like, and then trying to get an AN wrench on something that was really easy to get to out of the car. And now it's not, with everything in the car. So, I mean, it would be great if someone made, like, the way a dry sump system works is it's got like, vacuum and pressure feeds everywhere.
Right.
And if someone made like an all-in-one pan for that, then it would be, you can just hook up the lines like you need.
Okay.
And then it would be all the routing of everything inside for the proper vacuum and pressure would be handled by the pan. And then it would be low profile. But that's wishful thinking.
Did you guys even make the pan too?
No, I think Aviad, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but they make dry sump systems, so they have the pan for that motor already, and then they kind of have like a directional way of where you need to put things. So he was just talking to the tech over there on how it needs to be set up, what this is for, and then it's just a matter of routing everything and keeping it away from exhaust. So that was the most time-consuming part, I think.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't think a lot of people realize, and maybe they do after they saw your most recent interview with Cooper, that Senior designed everything. Like the kit, the turbo size, hot side, cold side, told this guy, put it here. Obviously, the guy probably would have been like, no, this is stupid. Let's not do this. And there was good conversation back and forth. Yeah. But there wasn't anything on this car in terms of 4 weeks out that wasn't designed by either Senior's input directly or indirectly. And then it all had to go get coated. It had to come back and work in the car. And then y'all decided to load it up, make a test hit, and then tell me what happened and the test hit at the rental. Or no, it was an event practice something.
Like a protest session, basically. It was for Out for Blood, which is like a big no time thing they do down here. It's actually a pretty cool event. And we went to it last year after FL2K to run the 450 pass. So we kind of like knew that we had that in our pocket before World Cup as a decent test session to go to, where the prep was going to be good. So yeah, the whole turbo system was kind of like, Senior and I were at Texas 2K. The story behind it is we were at Texas 2K. I think I was like immobile because I had a massive stomach issue. So we were just kind of like sitting a lot. I don't know what happened, but I was just kind of sitting, and you're waiting for, whoever. I was waiting for Brian and Aldo to go up, but I was looking at GTRs and I'm like, man, I really like the way they run an air to water and where the turbos are. And I'm like, we could make this work. And then obviously Brett has his setup that way. And there's only so many places you can put turbos in packaging it underneath the bumper on an S197 or even an S550. So I said, we need to go low mount. We've been wanting to do that. And I'm like, we could put the intercooler right here, put the pipes here. We just drew it. Both of us were drawn on a napkin. And then he drew it even more with like stencils. And then we get back, all of a sudden it's full size, like he had it to spec on this
whiteboard. He had a big whiteboard out there.
Yeah, he took a side profile of the car, did a bunch of measurements because he wanted to see the angle. So he just like drew it to spec. And then Joe Irwin at FFRE recommended a fab guy he uses. His name's Ryan Eckert, and he's local, which we wanted. And we wanted somebody to be able to come to the shop, bring your welding stuff, come make this home base. So we can leave the car here, and it's just easier for everybody to have oversight.
Right.
So he came to the shop for the summer basically. And him and Senior basically took what was on paper, and sometimes I stayed after and like gave input, but it was mostly them. Just, Senior wasn't welding, but he's like, yeah, put that there, put this here, put that there. And then once it's all done, take it apart, ship it out, coat it. Fortunately, it all went back in very good because we designed it to fit like in as least amount of pieces as possible. Because with turbo kits, it's like so easy to just like
people bend stuff around drive, steering shafts, and it's just it's a very space is at a premium on most setups.
Yeah.
So now, once that was all done and put together, and you guys were able to get it to go out for blood, how many test passes were you able to get in? Was it just one pass, or was it a couple before we had one small issue?
Well, we did the dyno, and that was obviously the most important thing before the track, because we don't know if it's going to explode or if we're going to have to re-weld something or whatever. And it made basically 1,700 horsepower on 6 pounds less boost than we did before. And we were like, okay, this is good. And then we did a spool check, and it was like, wow. And then we were like, we go to the racetrack and this thing hooks, it's going to go 6, like probably in 2 to 3 passes. And unfortunately, when we we didn't do any test passes. It went straight from dyno, I think on Wednesday. And then Friday, we went to the out for blood testing. And we went there, I think it was evening. I can't remember. Yeah, it was evening. We went there, and first pass was low boost just to make sure it would go straight, because we had like this different steering system up front now, because the K member was a S197 K member that had a baby with a Fox body front end.
Like so racecraft control arms with a UPR K member, like funky stuff going on, right? Like the hybrid.
And like the steering arms were like angled forward. But then if you go look at the blue car, it's the same way. So we're kind of like, it should work. And then we just like measured things, and it was all lined up. We're like, hey, should go straight. So he did like a $130 with a transmission issue that was tuner induced.
And I appreciate you admitting that. I wasn't going to bring that up, but I mean, everyone fucks up. But this was something that you went, even though you saw the issue happen, you must have been like, if I didn't do that, the data suggests this thing would have run a 0 or a 690 that pass.
The first pass was 8th mile, but it would have gone like like high fours easily on really low boost.
Gotcha.
Maybe a 460 because it was actually on 29 pounds.
Okay.
I didn't intend for it to go there, but I think the G meter tuning kicked in and it was like, I want more, which is fine. But then the next pass, we didn't know the trans was already hurt. And I gave it the sauce and it cut like a 112 60 foot without even trying. And then it just went straight to the limiter, and put the forward drum and the trans out of its misery. Basically what happened was I hung the dump valve open and we have the dump so hogged out. Basically it goes down to really low PSI on the charge pressure going to the converter.
Right.
When you hang it's an internal dump. So for Turbo 400 people, they have an internal and external. The external is usually on a cooler line and it's discharge fluid from the converter, not the charge fluid. So it's a little less dramatic. This affected the lube circuit too, and because it was open so long, and it drained all the fluid out of the forward drum and the converter.
I'm surprised the converter survived.
I am too.
And
that wasn't the. I think we used a different converter. There was one that Jake had that he took apart, and so we have two 4Ms. They're identical, but one's a different color than the other. I think this is the other one, but it didn't get.
Is that from the heat, or is that just
no? he painted it the color of the car, which I'm like, just to make it look pretty. That's the one that went back in for World Cup, but the one we pulled out, it wasn't hot, so we got lucky, probably because it just never made it down the track all the way. But the forward drum, the clutches were welded together, and I've never seen that before. I mean, it was like purple on the drum. So I guess there's a first for everything. So
Senior took it apart, must have been like, okay, I have other parts. I'm going to rebuild it, and I am going to stick it in the trailer and go to World Cup. Like that was literally the conversation.
It was, that drive back is always, we know how long it is, an hour and a half. And we're sitting, we're driving back, and it's kind of like we were avoiding the conversation while we're at the track packing the trailer up. But we both had that feeling, and Joe Irwin was there. And he's kind of like being a little bit devil's advocate, which rightfully so, because he's a longtime racer and we're just a bunch of tested tuners, right?
Right.
So he's saying you guys don't have enough testing for this combo. And he's not wrong. For that combo, we don't have enough testing. So he's like, you shouldn't go. And I walked over to Joe and I said, here's all the data logs I have off the car. And he's like, that's a lot of data. And I said, I know what the car is capable of doing. It's just a matter of having the parts in it to make it all work. That's why we're really excited about the engine. It's just we always knew the Achilles heel was this transmission. So going fast forward, we're on the ride home, and my dad's is quiet in the truck, and he's like, I know what he's thinking.
Right.
And he doesn't have the usual attitude of like where it's negative, which is always a positive thing.
Mm-hmm. It's a motivating thing. He gets mad, but then it motivates him.
It is, because I know he's thinking like, this car is stupid and I want to go fast in it. Like, and from he's a driver, like deep down, he's that pilot driver, like he's the stick. So if he hops in it and he can hit the pedal, he's going to do it. So that's why he doesn't lift when we go test.
Right. We're like, he's running it out the back. Okay, that works.
Yeah, he's like, I didn't see the board light up yet, so I got to keep going. So he's basically like quiet, and he's like, so what do you want to do? And I said, if you build a trans for it tomorrow, like I couldn't help him that Saturday. I'd already committed to some other stuff. Up until that point, I was basically helping him, keeping the pulse, like, because I know it's demotivating when you're by yourself, wrenching. And we don't have a mechanic. It's him and then whoever's available to help. So I was trying to help as much as I could to keep the spirits up. And I felt bad that I couldn't help come in to, help put the trans together. And he's like, I'll do it. And I'm going to do 2 of them. And I will have it knocked out, but 2 transmissions, 1 in the car, 1 backup, ready to go. I said, if you think you can do it, then we're going to do it. And then we'll make the trip. So that was the next hurdle is, can he get it running? and so we can load it up on Sunday.
Right.
I kept like tabs on him all day Saturday, and he was like, "I'm good. Mom's here helping me. She's over here helping them with like they had this method of putting it on the forklift, and then they were like rolling the trans upside down on this little tray. Talk about barn built 6R80s. I mean, we're in a hangar, but it's like this is how you would do it. So
Right.
he had Jake on speaker, helping him, make sure everything was good. But it was him disassembling it all the way to the rear planet and then putting it all the way back. And he did 2 of them at the same time, so each one was identical.
Okay.
And both had billet shafts. Like they're probably both the baddest 4R200, 3R200, 6R80s ever.
Right.
And I don't know if he went eeny, meeny, miny, mo to pick which one went in the car, but he put one in, and all of a sudden I get this video. It's like 10 o'clock at night, and it's just staring at the car. I don't know if I sent you guys a video. Maybe
No,
I
I
did.
never saw. I know he in one video or a picture he waved.
Yeah, it was the waving
camera.
one. Yeah, that's the one. And all of a sudden I see him walk around and put it on the 2-step, and it's just like pissed off. Like it's awesome. And he gets out and he's like this, and I'm like, he's ready to go.
Yeah, we're going.
He has a smile on his face. So I showed up Sunday, helped him load the car, and the rest is pretty much history. I mean, we can go into the World Cup.
Yeah, I want to go into everyone knows the result, but there is a general feeling you get of like, what are my expectations? I don't want to embarrass myself. And then that went from I don't want to embarrass myself, what are my expectations, to like, this track is tight, the weather's cold.
Mm-hmm.
We're not even trying, and we're cutting low 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, and we're like, this thing's fast. And then finally the first 6-second pass. At what point did it hit you that we could be competitive? At no point did we think we're going to come here and win this thing.
Right.
So at what point did you say we could be competitive? Because after the excitement of the 6 wears off, you look at the leaderboard and you're like, we're the qualifying slip, we're like top 5.
Yeah.
So at what point did you think we can be competitive? At what pass did you say we can be competitive at World Cup?
Oh man, that's a good question, because I think we were like trying to get back to where we were for the first like 2 or 3 hits, because we had testing on Wednesday.
Yep.
And it did a 7-1, and we were like, wow, that was easy. It was like 29 pounds of boost. Yeah. That's what we dynoed with.
Right.
And then Thursday was qualifying, and we went a 7-0. And I think then was probably the glimpse I had of we went number 1 in one of the toughest classes in World Cup. I mean, right. It's always the tightest. Like Street Fighter is really, really tight all the time.
Yep.
And I mean, honestly, it's always been like a dream to be able to qualify number 1 in any day at World Cup, let alone Street Fighter.
Right.
And I feel like at that point, I felt like we had redemption on the blue car, as stupid as that is. But like that car in 2019, if we had kept the nose down, probably would have gone low 7s.
Yep.
Like we were there. Like it was just a couple knobs away. And it just felt like we finally were back there. And 680s that next day when we were trying to, it was weird because we were number 1, we got bumped down.
Right.
We were all kind of like, and then the competition part I think was kicking in, at least for me. I'm like, I don't want to be number 5.
Right.
So we
were going like, do we even go? Like,
yeah.
don't we just sit pretty? And then you're like, no, we're going. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll just go up there and see what we can do.
Yeah, that was more like a conversation that I had with my dad. I'm like, we keep pushing this thing, and the way it's going, I don't think it's going to break. Like the engine's good. It's handling what we're throwing at it. The transmission's good. Let's just do it. And he's like, yeah, just give me something on the button. That's all he says.
It makes him feel better. So we qualified number 2, obviously, yep. And then we, run the field. I never felt, I'm going to be honest with you, my personal feeling is we raced the Honda, the Supra, the other Mustang S197, and then the Notch. I never felt afraid of any of those cars until the Notch, where I went, this is going to be a tight race. Like the
Yeah.
Super didn't make me go, oh my God. But let's say, for instance, you know, that red Camaro that also ran sixes, that car also gives me that feeling of like, that guy's good on the light, meaning these guys are seasoned racers. So up until the last race is when I got a little antsy. The Honda, we had good data on a greasy track. The S197, I think we just out horsepowered them. And the Supra didn't really run consistent enough for us to go, okay, we're kind of watching out for this car. Which of those races out of all of them were you the most nervous at before it actually went down?
I have to think
Because when you're
about
in
it
the
a little bit.
final, because you're in the final, you're in the money, so you're happy.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, we're here, you know. And then I didn't feel nervous, but I kind of felt nervous on that car based on how consistent the dude was. He was stupid. 680, 690s, 199, 198 every pass.
Yeah. It's funny. I think I was most nervous. I was most nervous about the not losing to the Honda. I was more nervous about spinning on round one, because that's kind of like the plague of World Cup when you're like with a fast car and it's cold and you've been hooking, and it always happens. It comes the weekend, you get your round one in the middle of the day, the sun's beating on the track, and it was hot sun. It felt like Florida sun.
Right.
And we knew that though, and I knew how to like make the car work for that. But I was just nervous about that spin. I thought, like, if I make it through this first round, I know the rest of the day is going to keep getting better, and I'm just going to keep hammering down. And each car we get, I'm just going to keep trying to make it go a little quicker, because I know we're dealing with a delay on the trans brake, and we're dealing with maybe a driver delay slightly, although he got better each hit. And obviously it was the trans brake mostly, because in testing he went 0.05.
Yeah, he like chopped his best reaction time in half based on how the trans brake releases.
Yes.
And I was like, so Senior was on the light. It's just the car wasn't.
Well, I mean, even at Mod Nats, we made that stupid test hit. He went 0.9. And that was with the previous. So I was like, you've gotten better every pass in the car. So it's a seat time thing. So, which that's usually the case. These guys are all racing constantly. And we hop in the car, 4 times a year, in a racing, environment.
Right.
But we know what to do now when we test. It's just you show up and you race when you test. So you try to cut a light every time.
So now after Senior wins World Cup, everything's good, and we're excited. There is the fallout, and the fallout to me is a little disrespectful, a little bit, right?
A little bit.
I think it's not that we want, or Lund wants adoration. No, like, we won one of the hardest classes in the most prestigious to us race of the year. So the slight disrespect starts creeping in, and I go, where's that coming from? Like, where do you think? There was some comments made by some people that there was no power limitations, this and this and that, or so.
I don't want to take away from.
Right. I don't mean to talk. Nothing against them, but I thought to myself, I would never do that, right? We would never do that. So then that also bleeds into some tuning nonsense. But do you feel legitimized? Also, we got a 1060 foot out of that sucker. So twice. So the 4R200, by the way, we're owed money, right? Like, somebody owes us some money.
I tried looking for the post. I thought I screenshotted it, but it's first gear leave, 1060 foot, first to do it. It doesn't say what first gear leave.
Ratio, right? It doesn't say anything. So, so what do you think? Like, after you're happy, you're excited that everything went down, then you see the subtle, backhanded compliment. Do you go, who cares? Or do you say it's part of the game? Or do you say, no matter what we do, we're going to be looked at as, test and tuners that got lucky 6 times on a weekend?
Right. Because we didn't work at all for each pass,
Right.
Yeah.
People think we just showed up and the car worked. I'm like, do you have no idea what happened?
They don't. I mean, I can see why some people would think that, because they don't know the journey to do that, because it is a journey. It's not like it just happens overnight, unless we told somebody exactly what to do.
Right.
I I forget who I was talking to, but I feel disrespected, and I think that's I don't want to be famous at all with any of this because it's a Mustang, it's a 6R80. Like how we're in our little world, maybe like we're in this tiny little corner of this massive, weird, odd shaped industry, right? And I don't care about being famous. I just want the respect. And like you said, everything we do always has an asterisk next to it, and I don't understand why. I think probably 5 years ago, I would get upset because I didn't understand why. And now maybe I don't care that I don't understand why. It just makes me want to do it harder and more. Like, I feel like uh, I just want to put more grit in everything. You know, like, like what worse way can we make people more
More
disrespectful
mad.
to us? Yeah,
Right.
and I think
So
I just makes me smile. So
I've started to see that change because we used to be like, well, what the fuck? Like,
mm,
why aren't we in the club? And then we're like, you know what? We don't need to be in the club.
yeah.
We can beat the people that are in the club and let them get mad that we're in a different club, beating them in their club. So I've always wondered if it's always better to have motivation. And I would rather be motivated by someone that just kind of hates on everything you do, poo-poos the fact that we're running a stock computer. Like I'd love for people to understand what it takes. Like I would say I understand 65% of what it takes, whereas obviously you have a better understanding of what it takes. But at 65%, I'm like, this is an engineering like master class of manipulating things that aren't even there and making
Mhm.
everything work. With you're basically limiting yourself, because you and I both know if we had a something simpler that was all in one with a turbo 400, we probably wouldn't be allowed in that class when it
Oh
comes
yeah, for
to.
sure.
They'd say no, like
Well, I
it's
mean, we were already limited. Like if we had a 400, we would have been limited to 68, 70 turbos or something. Like Brian Luna's car, we would have had to run that. And I don't have a problem pushing a combo that's it's class limited, I guess is what you could call it. I don't
right.
mind trying to push that, but for that car, we want to push it as hard as we possibly can in a specific trim, whether you want to call it handicap or not. Um, I don't think the 6R80 is a handicap anymore.
No,
So
wait, hold on. I don't think the 6R80s we tune like there's
I
I
don't
think.
think this 6R80 that's in the car is a handicap,
Okay.
but I think that it's a repeatable. I think it's a repeatable build.
Yeah.
But after what we did the other day, people are going to be like, "Yeah, no, you can't. That's not a 6R80. It's a 2-speed, whatever, blah blah blah," which is fine. But we haven't even reached the potential of that combo yet.
That combo, we just messed around and
Yeah,
we beat her personal best by 3/10 or
with
three
less
thousandths
power.
with
Yeah.
less power, and we went, oh man, this is gonna be dumb. So let's wrap that up. What are the plans for the Grey Goose next year? I know we're talking because it seems like Lund Racing is actually gonna go racing.
Yeah.
Now they can't say Lund tuning or Lund testing tuning.
Yeah.
Now Lund Racing might show up to your favorite racetrack. So the next iteration of the Grey Goose, what does that look like ideally for you, and realistically, what can it be based on? Because we all want it to be a 2,500 pound S197, but what do you think is the best we can get out of that chassis before we step into the deep end of the pool and do tube chassis stuff?
Um, I want to go after seeing what it did last Wednesday. I want it to go 650s. So I don't. The eighth mile, I know what I want in the eighth mile, and I think it can do it, and maybe it'll go quicker than 650s. But I want to see quicker than a 430 in the eighth. I think it would have done it Wednesday,
Yeah,
hands down, on that
me
one
too.
pass,
Right.
maybe on two passes. And if it had done it, we would have just kept turning the knob up, which sucks. But uh, that issue that we had, there's there's some things that we're working on to like see what it could be. It could be something in the tune. Like Jake doesn't think so, which is funny. He thinks it's the trans.
He always blames the tune first. He never blames the trans first. He always
because nothing is showing commanded what's going on.
Got it.
But I think there's a ghost in the machine. So it's just too coincidental that it happens where the 1-2 shift would be. And I don't mind talking about this. I really don't care. There's a customer we had at Mod Nats. He doesn't have a 4R200, and he has a regular 6-speed, and it has a blower car, foot brake, no trans brake, second gear leave, and he has a multi-tune.
Okay.
Well, this is the first time I tried doing like a first and second multi-tune selectable. So like tune 1's first gear, tune 2's second gear.
Got it.
And we had been flashing it, but the Engage on previous firmware, if it doesn't see a change in the strategy that's flashed on the car, so it goes, oh, it's the same one, it'll quick flash. Well, it had been quick flashing, and he went up and he launched in second gear, and it did a dip like the Grey Goose did.
Interesting.
And when it happened on the Grey Goose, I'm like, I've seen this before, and I couldn't remember what it was. So when we got back to the shop, I wish I would have, because in my head at the time when he was having the problem, I'm like, it's something to do with how it's being flashed. Like there's something storing somewhere in memory, and I think it's still trying to use a shift schedule for some reason. And I told him at one point at Mod Nats, you need to flash back to stock and reflash it. And I don't know if he did it or not before finals. He went 830s at some point. Okay. I'm trying to collect data, and he's also going to drop the pan on the trans to check his filter, because he did have a fresh trans in it. So it's kind of like 50-50. We don't know, like maybe this other car has a bad filter just like we do, possibly, or it's a similar problem. So we'll see. I think, and we won't get to test this for a few months, because now the car is going to be cut up a little bit. We're going to pull some weight out. I think conservatively, we want to pull 100 pounds out of the car. We may get more. It's going to require some, the fab guy, Ryan's going to come back. He's got his plasma cutter. And then
here we go.
Yeah, we're going to do that. And then Texas 2K, I think, is the goal. So we want to have it done and testing before then. And we're going to probably stick with the second gear leave for a little bit in it. And then the 400 is still sitting here, and it hasn't been shipped out yet.
Right. Like, I'm one of those guys, people that are listening, I'm one of those guys that I'm like, stick the 400 in it. Not anymore. Not after World Cup. I said, let's see how fast we can go with it.
That second gear leave was surprising. Like
how quickly it hit and how it separated. You could see everything happening, not in slow motion, but it happens better. It happened. Everything happens in it's like synergy. Like it's meant to leave in that gear.
It looked normal finally.
Right.
It looked like, and it looks like we're going to probably have to make a suspension adjustment to get a little bit more extension out of it. So,
correct.
But I think it blew the tires off on that one pass because of what was happening with the trans. I think it basically was neutraling, and then
reapplying.
Reapplying, and it's reapplying, and it was sticking, so it was holding. It wasn't slipping when it reapplied. That's just a testament to how nasty that transmission is.
Seriously, and I know that you and Cooper talked about cases and stuff, but honestly, if it's a stock case and it hasn't seen any signs of it breaking apart, and all of the forces are being held within this rotating, not the case.
Yeah,
I mean, the sky's the limit, in my opinion, as long as the car doesn't weigh too much, and everything stays together.
I think more he was like referring. I had to go back and listen to everything that I said because I forgot everything I said. So in case I needed to like correct something, and there's one thing I need to correct, but we can get to it in a little bit.
Okay.
He brought that up more for safety, I think, and we talked about it internally after that interview. And basically, the 400 and Glide had to go to an aftermarket case because I think people are breaking them. It wasn't like they were exploding them, and then that became a safety problem. So that was years ago, though. Like I don't even know when the first
the 80s or 90s or 70s, because the 400's been around since I believe the late 60s, early 70s, if I'm not mistaken.
People weren't putting 2,500 horse through them then.
No, 400, and you were lucky. And if you're blowing them up at 400, I would understand why you would need to have an aftermarket case then.
Yeah, but maybe the bell housing, what we need to do is make a blast shield of some kind,
Oh,
and
okay.
you could like just make it go around like the top of it, and we just have it
I
bolt
think they
in.
sell a Kevlar style blanket for this thing,
They
don't they?
do, but it's for like the planet areas, like
Oh,
or where the drums are, and
yeah,
none of that's. I don't think they're worried. They're more worried about the converter like doing that.
yeah.
So, and
I would
because it's
understand
only
that.
held on by 4 bolts right now, which is that is probably more dangerous than not having a better bell housing. And we actually got the trans out today. I had to go help with a crowbar because the converter was like stuck in the back of the crank, and that
Okay,
usually doesn't happen unless things have been moving around.
right.
So
Or twisting or whatever.
yeah, well, the 4 bolts, they weren't stripped, but they were under some severe stress. So
Wow.
yeah,
Well,
we're gonna
yeah.
have to like consider doing the 6 bolt converter, which we knew. Like it's still that weld together style, and we knew that we needed to go to we know we need to go to a 2 piece or something. We just need it to all function correctly. So
Maybe Fastenal can sponsor us. Like if Fastenal wants to provide hardware, I mean, look, that stuff
yeah,
ended up working out nicely. Okay, well, I mean, I wanted to cover World Cup and then the future of the car. You thinking go 650s? You thinking go 430s? And then chassis stuff. I mean, we're not even there yet. We got to
no,
see where, but I think based on the data, this is a data collecting process. Okay, Blue Goose made Gray Goose happen, and Gray Goose is going to make, if we do a tube chassis situation, it's going to make that happen because we're not going to really leave what we know if it's working and start from scratch with a completely new setup. We're not going to throw a big block Ford with nitrous on it and be like,
right.
no, let's just start from scratch. So I wanted to get onto, more less racy stuff and more OEM stuff because
Okay.
our wheelhouse is streetcar stuff. That is
Right.
95% of the customer, actually maybe 90. There's a lot of cars that are racing nowadays, but they're still street cars. S650. Internally, we talked about the S650 nonstop. And once we started verifying some things about the throttle body, the cold airs, and this and that, and then there's been a rash of people trying, for whatever reason, to go fast without a tune, which I don't mind them doing. But, if you're taking 600 pounds out of a car, 2 Lizzos, I'm like, I don't understand what that is doing for you unless you are selling Sawzall blades or I don't know what you're doing. So what's your thoughts of the S650 platform and what people are doing with it currently, whether it be Steeda, JPC, or just your regular Joe Schmo gutting it, running, into the 11s as a tuner? How do you view that kind of case use for the S650?
I mean, all our discussions internally, I feel like they all happened months ago because all the
Yeah,
it all like ramped up so fast because all the parts already existed to go toss on the car because it's an S550.
correct.
So I don't know if there's any innovation involved, and I think I've made a point online to say something like that, in that you could do the same thing with a 2018, probably better because isn't it lighter in general?
Depending on the trim, but in general, I would say not only is it a little lighter, but I think the stock tune is a little more aggressive in terms of torque reduction, I guess, because I guess that's the issue with the S650. It doesn't launch for shit. Like
Well, I think the S650 tune in terms of power is definitely more aggressive than the
previous.
18. Yeah, so maybe that's why it would be. Maybe they'd be close if you did all the same junk to both. Um, I I don't really follow any of it, which maybe that's bad of me to say.
Well, no, that actually is a telling thing because if it piques your interest, like we follow stuff like, okay, we saw a Hefner Performance R8 show up to a rental.
Mhm.
He drove there. It ran 770s. He drove home. So that piqued our interest. When an S650 cannot be manipulated in any way, shape, or form, given our history with, government entities and stuff, we're like, I'm not even going to look at that car until some kind of calibration can be sorted. Is that kind of where you're at with the S650?
Yeah, and I know like Ford hasn't changed how they really calibrate the engine. Like they kind of do this thing where they carry over stuff. Like there's stuff from '03 Cobras that are in 2011 Mustang, like idle air control.
Yes.
And then they got rid of that. But then obviously a MAF, how you tune a MAF is all very similar. There's
Yep.
no failed MAF tables anymore, but it's all like similar stuff, and it just kind of keeps rolling over. And I know that they did that on the S650 a little bit. Now the dual MAF stuff isn't for fueling, right? So it's speed density. So it's kind of like a F-150 with these two MAF sensors that are used for what?
Right.
Verifying something. And
Right.
trying to figure that out without having access to everything is a little bit of a pain for us. But maybe that's probably why I'm just like disinterested, because unless someone gives me everything, I'm I'm at the mercy of whatever, tuning company comes out with access in their software. And you're
Right.
limited. You're always going to be limited by that, because now you're going to go, I need this to log. And now you got to wait for somebody to add that to the logging parameters. While if I had access to everything, I could just do it all myself.
Right.
And some guys would say, well, you're just not that good because you can't go in and hack your way around it. Well, the hacking part isn't the tuning part. So the tuning part is like figuring out how it works. The hacking part is just finding things and mapping it. And I understand there's a different set of skills for that, but those people that do that don't necessarily tune the the calibration from that point on. They're just kind of like, I gave you access to it, have fun, and I'm fine with that. But I wish that we just had more of it. And I've already looked through the calibration, and I can already tell we're not going to have what we need to do everything we need to
Right.
figure out everything. And I kind of already asked like some of the right questions to some people that are doing that, and it has dual MAFs, dual throttle bodies. It doesn't look like you're going to be able to disable it at all. There's no like switch to shut
Wow.
off.
Okay.
So that's all hard coded. So anything Whipple's doing is like coming from, Ford, whoever they're using to do that. They have that custom strategy ability. The aftermarket does not. So you're going to see guys that want to run single throttle bodies having to use the Whipple calibration once it's mapped. Mapping that calibration is going to be a giant pain for whoever has to do it. So now we're at the mercy of that person. It's not like we have this software with this database and that comes out, and then we go like touch the car, and then and then we can like take it and move it over to our database. Like it every year it seems to get worse in terms of access to everything. Like the 21 F-150, for instance, only I believe HP tuners, liver noise, and SCT can calibrate them. I
Okay.
don't remember if Diablo has anything. I haven't been keeping up with them. So everyone prefers HP tuners for tuning them, and that's what we're tuning them with. Obviously, we have to. So I don't mind it, but while I was tuning it, I had to tell HP tuners, hey, you're missing this, you're missing this, you're missing this. I need this, I need this. And it was a process. Like, I mean, fortunately it was added in a timely manner, but I'm afraid that was like we were kind of late to the game with tuning it. And maybe
Right.
that worked out in my favor and being able to do all that because nobody else had asked for it yet. With the S650, I feel like everybody's going to be there once it's tunable. And who's going to where's the pecking order lie in terms of who gets first dibs on
Yeah.
A, flashing it, and B, requesting things? Who's the authority in the Ford tuning community to be able to request things to be added? Is it the people ripping out 1,500 pounds out of the car? Or is it the people that have just put a stock computer in the 670s? You know what I mean? Like,
Dude, I totally understand where you're coming from, because the people that are making S650s fast don't tune right now. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Generally, Steeda doesn't tune. JPC, I'm sure, tunes some race car stuff, but generally on the stock computer end of things, it's Lund Racing, and then there's a couple of others that do some stuff. So if we're out there on the forefront making stock computers go fast, why aren't we getting all of the first dibs to access to whatever is available, if anything, not only on Mustang, but F-150? Like, why do we have to kind of wait at all?
Right.
Imagine, I made a pen reference the other day about if we were approached by Bic and we sold a bazillion Bic pens, and then they wanted to try out a new pen and they went to someone else, I would go, excuse me, we just sold a bazillion Bic pens. Why are you using anybody else to? So that's the disrespect I'm talking about.
Yes. Right. I mean, that's really what it like. We already experienced a little bit of this years ago, and I don't mind talking about this. We went to PRI. I think it was the last time we went. Was it 2019?
19, yes.
So was that when we had the Blue Goose there? No, was
No,
that
that
18
was
or 19?
that might have been 18 when you got
No,
the
it was
Anderson
19. The Blue
process.
Goose was smushed. Yeah.
Yes,
So you're right.
exactly.
18 was the year before. 19, we went there and we were like, we've been showing off with the Blue Goose. Like we're kind of like, we thought we were at the pinnacle again, of OEM Ford tuning.
Correct.
And we got a meeting with Ford Performance, and we got to go to their Sky booth or whatever. And we thought, this is cool. Like finally we're here.
Right.
And we got told no. It's like, what about control packs? It's not anything to do with emissions. No. So you're not going to work? No. You don't want to work with us at all? No.
No.
I think I got an email, and I may have got contact with one guy, and he helped a little bit with a couple things, but nothing more than that. It was always like, I can't do that for you. And I understand like some restriction, but I don't understand how certain places get access more by just kissing the ring while we're out there doing the work, and
Right.
we get absolutely nothing. And
Nothing.
what is kissing the ring? Like, does money not kiss the ring? Like, we have 4,000 customers in the TDN. 4,000
Unique customers, meaning
unique.
unique customers. That's just on TDN, not counting Engage, not counting RTD, people that still flash with a laptop. You know what I mean? Just on TDN, we have 4,000 unique customers. Like that, does that not say we kind of have a bit of a corner in this market? Why don't you want to work with the ones that seemingly have the most customers, the most data, and the quickest vehicles?
Right. And this isn't I mean, it may be a little bit of like a wake up message to those companies. Obviously HP Tuners they did a lot for us in terms of allowing us to use their product after all the crap that happened in 21.
Correct.
I'm not going to go into all that because everybody knows about it, but they were there. So I can't forget about that. But at the same time, it's like I feel like we've paid our dues. I almost feel like we're always paying our dues, and I don't really understand why, but I feel like we have paid them. But with the S650, should it not be treated similar to the Global B release?
Absolutely. Yes.
Like it got released to those guys for that similar reason. And because, whoever had access to it at first, whether you disagree with it or not, it kind of needs to be that way. And I'm thinking that it won't be. What does that do though for the customers of the S650s? You're going to have all these, I already see it on YouTube. They start a YouTube channel going over the S650. And you're just like late to the game. And I already know what's going to happen. You're going to get all these guys coming to you. You're going to make all this like little bit of money, and then they're going to end up becoming our best customer.
Pretty much.
So, like we probably won't be the first ones to flash one. I've accepted that. So I don't care. I don't care about that. What I care about is more like that the disrespect kind of continues to happen.
It's almost like no matter, okay, in those people's eyes, what does Lund have to do to get that kind of respect, to get the feeling that we are kissing the ring? Are we not pushing the product better than anyone else? Are we not supplying the most volume? Are we not pushing units? Are we not doing what we're supposed to be doing, and very well, in order for you to say, by the way, you guys are badasses? Do you, in any capacity, do you feel anyone has prioritized us in that way? Ever? Anything? Any company? Do you feel any company has said, Lund Racing's top dog, I'm going to go the furthest with Lund Racing, they're going to get it first? Have you ever felt you've dealt with a company that treated you that way, or treated the company that way?
The only company that ever treated us that way was eMotion with the Engage.
Slagle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He like, for a programmer, hands down the best programmer I've ever worked with. And he went out of his way to help with all sorts of things. So I don't know if we'll ever get that again. It's just, it's difficult. So yeah, it's depressing.
It's depressing, but I really want, not everyone knows this. Not everyone knows the inside baseball. Not everyone knows, let's be honest, the politics of this stuff. I talk my shit on my channel because, you know, I'm the unofficial pitbull of Lund Racing,
Right.
where I go, I'm going to say some stuff up to a point, but you need to get the hint that we are aware of what's happening. We're not out there. We're not heads in the sand type of people. We hear it all. We know what's happening out there. And when we feel disrespected, all it does is motivate us. And I've never met a group of guys like we are, where, all right, you're not going to give us the shit. We're still going to go fast. We're still going to, and even if you're first to flash it, first to tune it, first to go whatever number, we're going to end up being the better ones at it, just maybe a little later to the game. Look at F-150. Did you even give two shits about an F-150 2017? Like 2017? Yeah, because everyone sees Cletus and Manuel and all these guys, and we're like, bro, like, you know, I understand the excitement because it's cool for some people, but like the care level is it's pretty low. So when did you say, okay, let me pay attention to it a little bit, and then all of a sudden Lund, Manuel, and all those people just started breaking record after record?
I think it goes back to I heard through grapevine that one tuner said that we suck because we don't do the F-150s. And I was like, you know what? Like, it's the same as a Mustang, but it has a map sensor. So I did it better. And, you know, that's what we do. Like, right. And then I'm like, might as well do the 15, 17 too. We did those. 11 to 14, I still don't care.
No, dude, every single time someone says
they're not, they're junk.
The intake cams are stupid. It's like, good selling. No offense.
The 6.2 engine is the dumbest engine ever, next to the 7.3 Godzilla.
Yeah, that's the other thing, right? Like, a lot of people were expecting us to jump on Godzilla stuff, and thank God we didn't, because it went nowhere. Like, we
saw that though. Like, we all had an internal conversation. We're like, it's a dud. Like, it's not. There's no market for it, and there still isn't. Now, this is a nice conspiracy theory. What if we had said, this is awesome and we're going to make it work? Do you think it'd be popular?
Yeah.
Because we touched it.
Yeah.
I think so.
I think so, yeah. If we would have been all in on Godzilla and really pushed it, I think more sales would have happened. But because we didn't, I think it helped it not go anywhere.
Yes. And I don't say that in a bragging way. I truly believe that people underestimate the power of cornering market. You know, we're no longer just a tuning company. We're that brand, you know, and now we're the quickest and fastest brand that wins Street Fighter at World Cup.
Right.
So that we just keep kind of tagging stuff on. And obviously, you and I in person, we're very humble, and we're here talking about this because people need to hear it. But we don't gloat about. It's not like we're constantly like, you know.
Yeah, we're not rawing. We get back to work. Like we literally just come back. work out, hammer out tunes. We don't sit there and like internally we celebrate and we are proud of our accomplishments. I am super proud of Senior's work ethic. Like looking at Senior, the fabricator, you pretty much staring the data down nonstop, and to be able to stick with this program, it gives you motivation. Like, bro, these guys are doing it, so you can't be slacking. You can't be like all poo poo and shit. So, but you are right that if we sprinkle anything with our brand, it gains popularity. Like, okay, example, EcoBoost Mustang. It's pretty dead. It's some people make some fast cars, but in terms of volume, how many EcoBoost Mustangs have you ever seen at an event ever run anything like anywhere?
Nothing. I mean, I got excited for a few months about it, and then I tuned one or two that were really fast, and then I realized this is super stupid because they just kept breaking stuff. I think UPR and one other guy. I think I still tuned the other guy, Mark, but he's a racer, so I like the racer. He's like big power racer that has an EcoBoost, whatever. I don't judge him for it, but he chases it like we do. He chases it like we do the 6R80. So he's in the same psycho category. But I recognize that in some people. People that stick with the IRS rear suspension, Brian Luna.
Yeah.
He's in that psycho category. So I don't mind doing that. But you're right. It's like so for the S650, we'll circle back to that. Who's tuning the car for these companies once tuning's available? Steed obviously is going to hit us up. Who is JPC going to use?
Good question. Because I don't know that they're either going to use us or a competitor. And then you got to wonder, okay, whatever. Let's say it's going to be, I'll name names. It's going to be us, Palm Beach China, or Rob Shoemaker, right?
Right.
That's it. That's it. Like you can't really name other names.
There's no tunes to copy yet.
Correct. Right. So it's not Lund B and Lund C. It's going to be, Lund, Palm Beach China, and Shoemaker. And you're going to go, okay, which one of those have taken a platform pretty far and pretty well? Now, this is what I think is going to happen, not to name names. I think out of spite, people won't use Lund right away. They will give first right of refusal to anybody else but Lund. Remember when the Patriots were winning all the time and you're just or the Chicago Bulls in the 90s? Anybody but the Bulls, anybody but the Patriots, right? Anybody but Lund. That's the way I look at it right now. Anybody but Lund. Everyone's got Lund. Well, yeah. Well, why would, if you're going to build a 9, 8, 7-second S550, S197, or a Gen 3 car, and people have repeatable combo, why would you go anywhere else to give someone else the opportunity? Or do you just hate Lund that much that you don't want them to touch your car because they tune a lot of fast cars? I don't understand that mindset. I really don't.
It's kind of like Trump derangement syndrome, right? It's Lund derangement syndrome.
Yeah, LDS.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are people that are building cars right now and are waiting for someone else to tune it just to say I beat Lund's record. And that's if that's your motivation, that's great. If you use it as motivation, awesome. But I don't think we're the type to like really care that much. But I think eventually we're going to touch every S650. Like eventually, one point or the other, if it does become tunable, first of all, we got to play with whatever sandbox we're given, right? So whoever says, here is the S650 sandbox, go play in it. So we have to play in it better than most. Now, because you understand the background, the ghosts in the machine of what really makes these cars fly, how likely are you, because we're playing in sandboxes here, to bring custom stuff into that sandbox, knowing everyone's going to have it the moment you ask for it?
Custom stuff? How? What do you mean custom stuff?
No, let's say you know how you can make 1,000 horsepower 6R80 actually shift, and it's not it's not indexed in commercially available software. And you say, "Can you add this?" And they're like, "What do you mean add this?" I'm like, "I just know it's there. Just add it." They ask you why. You say they add it, and then all of a sudden, all the other tuners have the thing. Do you then go, where's the edge? Where is our advantage? Because let's be honest, level playing field. Only standalones have a level playing field because they have 15 tables.
Yeah. The same table that gets nudged around, right?
We will talk about that. That's what we're going to end up with. But your thought process on the early days of potentially, because it's not just tuning the S650, it's flashing the S650. People don't understand. You got to flash it. You got to understand how to flash it and not brick, and then you got to tune it. So, do you think it's going to be like F-150 where computers go out, get pats off, go back in, and then we have to play in the limited edit, commercially available software sandbox?
I think, well, first, the whole thing about asking companies to add parameters, and that I've already had to do that a little bit, and I don't like doing it, because if it's there and it's named somewhat properly, you're going to shut it off, and you're going to do something with it, and you'll figure it out. You wouldn't have been able to have access to it unless we added it or helped add it for you, because it wasn't already there. I don't like doing that, but sometimes you have to. 21 plus, obviously, we've had to do a little bit of that with. So you're welcome, everybody that's listening. And because you've probably been using it and it's been good for you. So as far as the new stuff, I'm going to be in that same boat, and the edge goes away a little bit unless one of those things you add is very specific on what you're supposed to do with it. And that does exist, and sometimes we get fortunate with that. As far as the trans goes and shifting the 10R80, I know that they changed some stuff, and the edge still there, much like the 6R80, is you still have to understand how one of those transmissions work. And I am convinced that most people that tune a 6R80 and a 10R80 don't understand how the transmission functions. I don't even know everything about it, but I at least know how it functions. And there's guys that have Turbo 400s and Power Glides that don't know how it functions. They just know that some dude builds it and you slap it in and you're supposed to release a button. That shouldn't be how it is.
Right.
So for that stuff, there's still an edge, because there's certain things you need to do in order to make it shift right. And I've already seen that with the 21 plus F-150 trucks.
Okay.
I have a tune on it, which through HP tuners do what they do with the ECU after they've done their unlock or whatever on it. It can't be read. So fortunate for us, that tune can't be read off unless somebody on a bench somewhere figures out how to do it. But
gotcha.
I think it blocks it. So the read is blocked. So that won't be sucked off. The only thing that could happen is I send a file that doesn't have it locked, and they could, see everything because I have to send raw HBT files for that.
Oh, gotcha. But you have to make sure that the lock is enabled or whatever.
Yeah, but it's not difficult to remember that. So, but ours shift really good. So they shift kind of like the previous ones. They did change a little bit of logic. I think the S650 is going to have the same stuff. My hope would be that if they figure out how to do the similar unlock, if it's going to require shifting the ECU off, that same stuff happens. And then, those numbers we put in that we nudge around can't be copied.
And that's a great segue into our final subject. We basically had 3 bullet points to cover. I thought we would be about an hour and a half into it. So let's talk about standalone tuning, aka AEM, Fuel Tech, Holly, and Motec. I'm going to be honest. I think Motec has its own little box because we know that Motec is just so good, especially with OEM Coyote stuff. I kind of hold Motec in a different. I don't want to lump them in. Let's just say that I don't want them to catch any shrapnel. You know what I mean?
Like Motec, especially with the 6R80 stuff, is the most OE you will get out of a standalone, I think. Okay. So, because I've played with all of them, Motec I've played quite a bit with, and it's my favorite one. So, and that would be the OE tuner in me liking it because like really simple things. You can go in and adjust your fuel storage with a number versus a drop down. Now I don't know anything about I don't know anything about Haltech. Haltech could have something different. Pro EFI, I don't even know if they're even like part of the conversation anymore.
Right.
Um,
So what standalones
but the
have you
drop down
messed?
stuff pisses me off. Like for that, like
Is it
how
because
can,
you don't see the changes, or is it
well,
because
like how can you like? There's so many different ethanol fuels, right? Ethanol
right?
race fuel. Like
Yeah.
C85 is one storage. Pump ethanol is its own storage. 985. Ethanol one is probably lower. 92 like C85. You could have 100% ethanol. That's 90. The drop downs don't have 85, 80, or
Oh,
90, 95%. It just
stop.
says ethanol or 100% ethanol or methanol.
So then they
Or,
slam the base fuel table or whatever.
yes,
Oh, that's like us
bro,
slamming the math. You
they
can't
do.
slam the. Stop it.
They do. So if you're
Stop.
off 5% because of the storage, and that should bug the calibrators,
Correct. It
right?
bugs the shit out of me. I'm like,
I would argue it should bug the tuners too, like the tuners with the TOO. Like
right, right,
it
right.
should bug them. And they go in and they have to hammer the base fuel table.
Oh
Like
no.
there's guys with Holly that they still do this. And they did it before because they didn't have a way to look at air fuel and lambda. So they could only look at it in the air fuel
AFR.
scale. Yeah. And
Okay.
guys understood the 14.7 scale better than the ethanol scale because,
Okay.
watt is 11 something and with boost or whatever.
Two
So they
numbers.
would go in, they'd leave it gasoline. And when they put ethanol in it, they'd go hammer the base fuel by 40%. It's shocking.
Okay.
And that is widely accepted in fuel tech and
No, stop.
yes, it is. It
You're
is.
telling me tuners are out there hammering what we would equate to a math table by 30% to skew the fuel so it reads trims properly.
Well, because the argument is that the final pulse width is the same. So the engine doesn't care, right? That's their argument.
But why not just change the stoic?
Because you can't, because there's a drop down.
Oh, okay. So
or they don't want to look at it in, idles 9.8, and when it goes watt, it's what, 7 something?
yeah.
They don't want to do the math. But Holly finally added a lambda view. Fuel Tech has a
Wow.
lambda view. I'm
Wow.
like Fuel Tech, I did not mind looking at. It's a nice piece of software to look at if we're talking that kind of tuning.
Okay.
Motec is obviously more complicated, and it resembles an OEM. So
And to someone like me, so in your opinion, because you've tuned Holly cars, you've tuned Motec cars, the black the money pit. We do have a 15 GT that is pretty stock, and we have a Motec on it, right? And we do Motec messing around with it.
it had a Motec on it, but yeah, I played with it for a few months. Yep.
Okay, so he's familiar with it. But you have tuned Holly cars, you have tuned a couple of guys here and there. Now, how difficult was it for you? Because look, I find you to be pretty smart, but also you have a lot of common sense. Did you have to remove 3/4 of your brain to tune stuff like Holly because it's so simplified and what you would call in the OEM side hack tuning? Or did you say it's just different, I have to learn what they're trying to tell me? Because when you look at a stock computer, there's naming structures, you can add your own parameters. With standalones, as far as I know, can you add your own table? Can you just populate a table on Holly and say, I'm going to make this the VCT table?
Right. In Holly, they call it advanced tables. Like you could add an advanced 2D or 3D table based on inputs that are on it.
Okay.
To manipulate something. Typically, you're not doing that unless you need it to do something for like a race function, like based on time, or a lot of guys use it for dump valves and all that crap. But as far as like doing the simple drivability tuning, most of what you need is there. The time consuming part is looking through the software to find it because the naming doesn't necessarily match what you're used to.
Okay.
In Fuel Tech, You can turn on and off certain features, so you can simplify your tune. You can kind of build your calibrations. They kind of have a wizard, which is pretty neat. Like you could punch in number of cylinders and your crank sensor information or the crank trigger, and they can kind of like spit out a calibration you start with. Holley doesn't have that, but they have base files. So there is like a list of, there's Coyote base file, there's a modular Ford base file. It's just funny because I thought a Coyote was a modular, but
That's what I thought. I'm like, why does it have 2 Coyote files? I don't understand that.
Question: could you take a modular base file for Holley, switch the firing order for the Coyote?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know because in the software it says it doesn't say Coyote.
Oh my god! So it says 32 valve OHV and then Coyote.
I'm just
What's the difference? You could do an F-150 motor. You could do a Voodoo. You could do a Predator. You can do whatever the hell you want. It's a variant.
We've tuned. Right now 5.4 is a Coyote variant. Golly. Dude,
I could tune a small block Ford with Coyote stuff. Like if you
don't tempt me. I want to tune an LS9. I want to do a 6R80 LS9 with a Win 3.
LS9?
Yeah.
What I have in my Corvette?
Yeah, we can do it. Let's do it.
No, I don't know. Like people don't understand. You can tune anything with anything. You know,
can. It's all like fuel injected, obviously, but yeah, as long as you get, the firing order right and crank trigger and cam sensor, everything. It's all doable. Now, the thing with the standalone is that you're either starting with a base file or you have created it yourself.
AKA, this one runs really good. Save.
You mean to tell like these guys that are propping themselves up as doing it all from scratch? There's no way that on every single one that they do. So if they've done a bunch of LS3s, that they don't use the same LS3 base file.
Absolutely.
And whether it came from Holley or you did your own stuff to it, it's no different than what we're doing with the stock computer. So to say that we are nudging things around is a bit of a disservice, and it's pretty disrespectful in my opinion, because while the tables are fixed and I can't adjust their axis count, I can't turn a spark table into whatever I want. Right. Because my software doesn't allow me, because I'm fixed on the stock database that comes from Bosch or whatever, Ford. I'm not just moving numbers around. Like our spark tables are generated based off of feedback we've gotten from data logging. Our MAF curve is obviously unique for almost every vehicle, except for some naturally aspirated stuff, but power out or whatever. We are pretty good with being stuck to injector data because we know that the injectors don't just change, which is just like a standalone. So I don't understand like where the hate comes from in terms of saying that it's easier for us to tune a stock computer than it is a standalone.
Boy, they have no idea.
I'd like to see like there's so much crap that they don't have to worry about. Anytime the Grey Goose goes down the track, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, is there going to be a new torque limit that we're going to hit?
Correct. A new torque source just pops up.
Yeah. And what's going to happen? Like it hits it, what happens. It pisses, like it could blow the engine up for all we know.
Spark, it could chop throttle while it's trying to shove 45 pounds of boost in. It could do crazy shit.
Yeah. Right. And on a standalone, you don't have to worry about any of that. There are no torque limits.
Right.
Motec actually would be the only one that may have a torque limit because they have that.
That's why I put them up here, because I think a lot of people like okay, and let's be honest, right? If you were to take people that predominantly use Holley and put them, let's say 10 of them on the left, and people that predominantly use Motec and put them on the right, there's a visual difference between the people. You're like, okay, I understand,
man.
but am I wrong?
Like, you're not wrong. I think there's smart guys on both sides. They're just
I'm not
smart
saying
in
they're
different ways.
dumb. I
Yeah,
never said they're
they're
dumb.
right.
That's you saying that, sir. I'm
Yeah,
saying
yeah,
I'm saying the looks are a little different.
there
So
is.
I go, okay, that's why I make fun of Holly stuff tongue in cheek, because we all know a lot of fast guys use Holly
Right.
stuff.
The general thing with stock computer guys is we call it caveman tuning, right? Like,
Right,
and they know that that's what we think,
right,
and they call us nudgers.
right.
So it's like,
Like when somebody says hit the plus button on the fuel table, I go, which fuel table? If
yeah,
there's no plus button, you have to multiply it by something.
yeah,
So tell me which fuel table, sir. And they just go, what do you mean? And I think it's because they have one fuel table
one,
and they just
yeah.
go plus, 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 and it
Well,
does what it needs to do.
I think the plus button on their keyboard is a multiplier.
It is, no wonder they say plus
I
button.
think it does like a percentage. Or it's the same thing. I mean, they can like
Change
select
that.
and
Yeah.
then right click, and if you saw one and you were like, basically you can't learn with Holly unless you're tuning a car. But if you saw it, you're like, there's fuel trim. The Holly is kind of cool because it's got what do they call it? Telemetry data logging, where like wherever you're at in your data log,
It's live.
It's live.
Right.
Funny enough, Motec doesn't have that unless you're like in the car. So if you're remote, trying to remote tune a car with Motec is kind of a pain because you would have to do it like OE. You have your data log on one screen and your tune on another, and you're kind of like doing this. Fuel Tech sort of has it. Holly does it the best. So they have that live telemetry, but I think Motec is actually fixing that. Anyway, that's all they do. They go, then there's just a learn. So there's like a learn table it learns it into. You just take that, you copy it over, and then you look and see what it did, and then you re-smooth it, and then you go back and relog it. It's just what we do. It's just like histogramming.
Right.
Yeah,
So I think a lot of the standalone tuners probably look not down. You can't look down on OEM style tuners because it's a little more difficult, don't you think? In terms of just the work involved.
They're going to say something about injector phasing and something about how it has to be dialed in properly in order for something to not blow up and this crap and blah, blah, blah. And they try to make something that, they would say that we don't have to touch, but they have to touch. And that's, that puts them on a different pedestal because they have to know that information. When in reality, some of that stuff they don't even need to touch. It really is about just spark and fuel. And that's what it comes down to. Like, right. And it amazes me because a lot of those guys that do tune standalones are it's old school mentality mixed with a little new school. And spark plug reading with ethanol and methanol is difficult to do.
Correct.
You're still, looking at the plug. You're still making sure it's not melting things. You're still looking at, if your engine's apart, you're still looking at the piston. It's all looking at the same stuff. And you can tell by how your tune-up is doing based on how everything is looking. And you just kind of correspond the mechanical with the data. So I don't know why that guys have to make it seem more complicated in order to elevate their authority. I feel like that's what's happening.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't want to let other people know that what they do is not that unique. Or I don't want to say difficult because I don't want to poo-poo that. I think if you have a brain, I'm going to be honest, I didn't know shit about carburetors, right? And carburetors is a black magic to a lot of people that only touch laptops. But once I got the ins and out of it, because I understand and you understand how an engine works, you're like, okay, it needs this, it needs that, it needs that. I have no doubt that if you give me, let's say I build the Fox body and I want to just for the hell of it do Holly stuff. You don't think I can make that car run a number within a couple of tenths of what the top tier tuners can tune it for? Right. Easy. Yeah. So I have supreme confidence in that because of my not only knowledge of what we do every day, because what we touch is okay. The data log we see it could be seen many different ways, and a lot of people don't understand that. You could see a lean issue happen, so you would hammer the base fuel table, but then you see a torque source because of its spinning, like it's traction control, and then you go, oh wait, it's fuel authority, it's probably pulling fuel. Others would go, hit the base fuel table. It needs fuel there. I'm like, wait a minute. It's torque sourcing. It's pulling, it's protecting itself. So that taught me to look at everything. And I'd probably be overreacting to standalone stuff where I should just hit it here because there's no torque source unless I have it set up to have traction control or what have you.
You would have different like views you can look at because it's logging way more than the stock what we can log with stock ECU stuff at a time. Mm-hmm. I mean, the stock ECU has a bunch of stuff, and if we piggybacked on like part of the ECU, we could log a whole lot more than what we do with like over OBD. But standalone, like Motec, for example, it's like 400 parameters at once. So you have to have different views, and part of your process when you pull up the log is you're going through each tab and you're looking at everything. So you would see an issue, be like, let me go check my event tab is what we'll call it. And you have your traction control, your decel, anything that would cause a lean condition. And that's what you go look at. So they kind of have torque sources, but it's more like a state change. So that's why I call it the event tab. Something that happened that was an event. And they all have their flavor of it, just like a stock ECU does. So the standalones get everything from there's like an EFI book somewhere, and it's like the Bible, and they pull all that same process and procedure from that, and that's kind of just how, and they all just pick their own flavor and way of doing it. So
there is a template way of doing things. A let's just say a blueprint,
standard operating procedure.
Okay. Yeah. Understood. So are you amazed sometimes where you get asked a question about OEM tuning that is not an issue, but it is an issue for standalone guys, like fuel control or something like that? You're like, no, it's fine. Why would I have fuel control issues on that fuel? I have no issue with that. Like, you ever gotten a question? Like, give me an example of a question you've gotten from a standalone tuner. Like, I literally got told this to a very well-known standalone tuner. He says, how long does it take you to change over from pump gas 85? I said, a second. I go to the Stoich. I go from 14.0 to 9.8. Done. And he goes, that's it? I go, yep.
Because he has to go hit the base fuel table.
Right. So I said, it's one change. And he's like, so it doesn't take long? I go, no. Typically, the changes we make for E85, without being specific, is some startup stuff, Stoich, maybe some spark. And really nothing crazy. People think we go into the injector area and change stuff.
Change the
like,
phasing.
Right. So have you ever been asked by a standalone tuner or someone that's proficient with standalone stuff a question that sounds silly to you, but understanding what they see, you go, this is where I had an advantage with OEM style tuning?
Yeah, I think, there's somebody recently that asked, like, we're running a methanol mix on the Gray Goose, and they said, that must be hard to control. And I said, it actually is fine. And they're like, really? And I said, yeah, you mix it. We know the Stoich of both fuels. You do a little math and you punch it in. And then when you go watt, it just works. And he's like, you don't have any fuel control issues. I said, no, it's just the data's there. And you manipulate what you need to manipulate, but the MAF curve's dialed in, the injector data is correct, and all I got to do if I want to go from 30% methanol to 50% is change the Stoich.
Right.
And that's all I did when we took the car to the track last time. The other one that I saw, and the trims were like 0.95, so it was actually pulling a little bit.
Right.
And it saw like 255 pounds per minute or something stupid.
Can you explain that to people? Because you and I, boom, makes sense. So this is a MAF reading, and what is it correlating? It's airflow. It's give me the rundown of that MAF reading and what it equates to in terms of horsepower.
Okay, so that MAF reading, there's on the ECU you can log like the PIDs, and then that's what we would call a DMR or a memory PID, I guess is what it's called. It's like different, used in different parts of the code. So, and it's specific to that strategy on the computer. So that MAF, we call it MAF raw. It sees based on frequency what point on your MAF curve you're at. So that MAF pounds per minute is reading from the MAF curve in the tune. Mm-hmm. So the trims are 0.95 and it's reading 255. It's probably a little high, like
Right.
it's a little bloated. So, but the MAF frequency is not wrong. So in order, so the way the MAF works is whatever we put in there through a course of calculation and math inside the computer in the logic, it's spitting out a pulse width to the injector to hit that target fuel flow for that airflow.
Right.
And so I guess it's a little fat on trim.
Right.
So because it's pulling fuel.
And that would skew air load very slightly if it's
very
fat.
slightly. Yeah. And we have a different sensor in it to scale, so we're not, at really high frequency, which creates a little bit of heat because it's higher voltage on the MAF. And that leads me into my correction from Cooper's podcast. I didn't watch it all through, and I can't remember where I said it, but I said something about it reading like 20 volts or something, and it won't read 20 volts on that circuit because it's a 12-volt circuit.
Yes, I remember
digital
you saying
frequency.
That. Right.
Yeah, I think Nick at PMAS told me it may see like 7 volts or something.
Wow. Okay.
So imagine if you're running if your peak frequency can only go to 16 hertz, and we're at 15, and it's a 12-volt circuit, it's getting pretty high.
Close, right.
More heat, and usually that can start skewing things. So that's why we put a different sensor in to help scale it back.
Right.
The other instance with a standalone as an engine builder, he said could be failing. This cylinder could be having issues because they're not tuning the injector phasing properly. I was like, what? Like,
dude, like
it. The engine. So this is when I slow things down in my head. I'm like, the engine's spinning at 9,000 plus RPM.
Yep.
So that means the piston's moving up and down really fast. That means the injector is spraying or pulsing really fast. Oh, so fast that it's probably just open.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking the valve is just, buzzing, stupid fast.
Right.
And the injector's just hung open at that point, right? It's probably at 80-90% duty cycle. So it's basically open.
Yeah.
What phasing are we worried about at that point?
And tell me what I need to phase it to. Like what phasing and what do I need to phase it to? And I think it's just someone opened a book, saw the word phasing, saw that we never mentioned the word phasing, and they said, well, maybe they're not phasing the injector properly. like I'm blown away that some of the stuff that people tell us are, hey, my AFRs look weird. Like your AFRs look weird. Like on D-cell. Yeah, okay. Well, so you kind of have to put yourself in their shoes and go, what did they mean? As opposed to, I do this with language all the time. I do this with Spanish to English translations. I understand what they're trying to tell you, so I say this is what they mean. When someone says phasing, I don't even know what the F they're talking about. I go, explain that to me in an OEM computer sense and how I would adjust it. Like, please explain it to me. And they can't. They usually can't.
I think what they were trying to say was that the injector wasn't starting its spray pattern at the right time. But then I'm like, the air fuel is obviously fine. And I understand that sometimes air fuel can be, the sensor could maybe lie, maybe.
Okay.
But it wasn't like it was lean. I think it was a head seal issue. So it was lifting the head.
Correct.
And it was pressurizing the coolant system. But to say that to a tuner from an engine builder is kind of like a cop out to me, when you should be talking about how you should better seal the engine because it didn't show up on the spark plug.
Right.
Like if you were having an issue that was lifting the head because it was like an event problem inside the cylinder, I always say, what do the plugs look like? What do the valves look like?
Right.
What's the piston look like? Nothing going on. Well, tune-up's good. You just didn't do a good job bolting the head to the engine.
When
it's
Keith,
really that simple.
Right. When Keith took apart my motor, he goes, tune's on point. I see the color of the piston. I see the fire pattern. I see the valves. I'm like, I would run the same tune. I'm like, I intend to run the same tune. I'm not really going to be that far off. So if, like you said, you read a plug, the combustion event looks good, but the head is not sealing. How is that a tune problem? Like, how is that a tune problem? And a lot of people don't, they say, instead of, I like the engine builders that can say, you know what? I might not know everything, because if you know everything, then you always learn, right? So I would like to, like we work with Joe at FFRE. Senior has taught him some stuff. We have learned a lot from Joe. Joe's very knowledgeable. So we like that relationship. But when someone says, it's got to be this, not my actual sealing techniques, we're probably not going to take it that seriously. We're not going to blast you on Facebook or Instagram. We're just going to say, okay, well, when somebody asks, people that have 4,000 in a tuning system of a bazillion engages out there, who should I send to get my motor built? We simply say the people that treat us the right way, and they get business. So we don't have to say it publicly. We can basically, tell someone else to get it built elsewhere. And we don't have a vendetta. We just say, hey, look, we work best with this engine builder, and they've been pretty good with us, and we haven't had any issues. And it's been, we know what we tell people most of the time, the people that are listening to this, we tell them to get an Illuminator.
That's just a better stock engine, right?
Yeah. I go, if a stock engine didn't have an issue or any problems, but your built motor does, that is your clue to that you should just point at one place for the issue. So I say just get an Illuminator. We saw one of the guys that we tuned. This is his 5th or 4th year with an Illuminator Gen 3R running 870s, 850s or whatever. And I'm like, what a guy, having a good old time of his life with a Illuminator, just doing the thing.
Yeah. And we've had plenty of guys with stock Gen 2, even some Gen 3 motors with just studs, gaskets, valve springs.
Corey Grayley. Corey Grayley's my go-to example. When before he was built, now he's built. But that guy was running 860s.
Yeah.
And he's a big boy. The car was probably 3,800, 3,900 pounds race weight. And I'm like, dude, that's what I would build. So I appreciate the candidness about the whole standalone stuff, because there's only, in my opinion, you can only take so much subtle disrespect before you have to confront the fact that half of these people that are disrespecting you, one, don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Two, are probably saying stuff out of spite. And three, why even mention it publicly? Like, if you dislike Lund, right? Let's say you dislike Lund, or you dislike OEM style tuners. Why make it public? Like, why make a dislike of the public if one day, let's say you have a customer that doesn't want a standalone tune, wants a nice little Shelby Mustang to go 990s, and you can't tune it with your Fuel Tech, your Holly, or your anything, and you got to recommend somebody. We're gonna remember. Like, we have memories like elephants. I go, hey, I look back in my Rolodex of assholes. I go, this guy said something back in 1980. Fuck him. So don't think we don't keep tabs on people.
Well, and that's funny you say that, because I've had to recommend some standalone guys recently. And the ones that I've met in person, and they were respectful. They don't talk crap online. At least I don't see it.
As far as you know, right?
As far as I know, but they are respectful in person. They're like, props to what you do. It's simply amazing. I'm like, all right, you're in my Rolodex of people I'll recommend when I know I don't have time to deal with a standalone.
Right.
So I'm like, go to this guy, because he's respectful.
Right.
I don't think, I know that somebody was making a joke recently about stock computer stuff, and I think it was just a joke.
Okay.
But I like running with jokes. So, the other one I don't think was a joke. I think it was serious, and he was just trying to nudge us a little bit.
Which, it's funny, the nudging, but I guess I understand why you would say that, because maybe you want what you do to seem harder or maybe more skilled than what others would do. But I don't know. I don't go around saying I'm the best. Like, I say tongue in cheek. Like, if people don't understand that I say I'm the best fucking tuner on the planet, if they think I'm actually being dead serious, bro, you got something else coming. But I say it to, boast, talk shit, but I don't go into other people's stuff. Like, I have literally, you said it on Cooper's podcast, you stop going to any Facebook groups that have Mustang shit in it. And it's because it's just a toxic, crazy group of guys that generally don't know what they're talking about. But once in a while, you dive in there and go, oh, by the way, we ran a 1060 foot. Where's my money? Where's my money? So I understand the online stuff can get chippy, but honestly, people like us would probably use it as fuel, and we would just go out there and just run a better number and prove people wrong. And that's seems to have been successful so far.
Yeah. I don't, and it doesn't, like, I know we're probably gonna, anything we've said in this is probably gonna get snipped, or we're gonna get a message and it'll be an apology, but it'll be a backhanded apology. It'll be like, I really meant to say this, but blah, 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 blah. And it'll be like that. And that's fine. Or we'll get an official call out of some kind. I don't know. I don't care.
For what though? Like, call us out about what?
Right. Like, I don't know. Like a challenge. This will be the second time I've been challenged in a year.
You were challenged? Wait, without being, wait, I don't remember. Oh, yes, about your integrity, about your yes.
I challenged, whatever. We won't even go into that. So, but that it's just you know, we handle that though with just kind of like, you know, it's a little bit of that, you know.
But you know, there is a constant fire, right? There's a constant furnace burning that all you need is, you know, the right fuel, and it doesn't manifest itself in Twitter fingers. It manifests itself in better products, quicker cars, and generally, you know, more business. And it is funny how we can take criticism and slight hate and turn it around and, you know, make not just money, forget money, because, you know, but a better product. And who wins? The customer. Like, the customer always wins when someone talks shit on us every single time.
What is it? Controversy creates cash, I guess, is what the saying goes. And I think that, like, in the last 12 months, we've probably had more controversy than we've had in a few years, you know, with crap that happened a year ago.
Yep.
And that chirping has, like, it's over. Like, it's done.
Dude,
so, we just kept our mouth shut after, you know, we were hot for a little bit.
Right.
But then we were like, we're done. And look what happened.
Dude, people left. People disappeared. People are just like, I'm out of here.
I mean, like, I'm just kind of like,
they just disappeared.
I said something on Cooper's podcast where I was just like, I've learned, like, 5 years ago, I would have just been like in it. Like, I'm ready to hammer down. And you're probably like, no, Junior, don't do that. Like,
don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And now it's just kind of like we both just sit back and we're like, it'll blow over. Okay. And I mean, we throw a grenade in there when we do it, but
sure. You know what's crazy? We have, I think, a cult following. We have people that anytime someone tunes a fast car, it's like, it's probably a sucked off Lund tune. I don't have to say it anymore. You never said it. And it's just it. And it just comes out that, you know, some stuff is verified, some stuff isn't. And we're just like, okay, good. We've created, I'd like to think, a good atmosphere to be successful, meaning we're not going to give you crappier products, and our services aren't going to degrade with criticism. And if anything, they're going to get better. So not that we welcome the criticism, because we're not looking to pick a fight, but we're not going to back down from one either. So
we'll open our mouth when we need to, and we'll shut our mouth when we need to. Like, we just have that pulse, and I don't think that, I think it's consistency, really. Like, I recognize times where I'm like, it's really like pissing me off and I want to do something about it. And I think in those moments, I'm like, that's the moment where I really need to keep my mouth shut.
Yeah.
And that I'm going to react a certain way. So it's, and it really applies to everything that we do in life. Cause, like, if we're ever going to, you know, you would be in an altercation in person, you're always like, you end up going on your back foot a little bit because you don't know what the other dude's going to do. Right. So it's just kind of like this. It has to be the same way, though. And I think, like, when we were younger, we're like, I'm not on a back foot. I don't have a back foot.
Right.
I'm ready to run at you.
Well, we had that happen. Right? We had a moment where everything happened at the same time. We were calm when we needed to be calm, and aggressive when we needed to be aggressive. Like, I remember pushing a guy out of our pits, but then Senior talking very, not forcefully, but like, hey, we don't have an issue with you, bro. We're good. But then I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting, like, what's gonna happen? Like, we're all kind of like, this can pop off. But it was interesting to see all that happen at the same time, and that was probably our worst week, right? Where the Blue Goose came down, freaking thrashed, and we were just like, F everything. But then in that moment, we didn't overreact to a situation, and everything kind of like blew over, and it really was severely overblown what was happening in the pits. And I was just like, this is so silly. But the way we handled it makes me kind of think how we handle online silly stuff that happens all the time.
Yeah.
To end it, let's talk about the future. A little bit of Lund Racing. We got about maybe 20 minutes before it's a 2-hour show. What do you see in the future? Because S650 is an asshole. Ford isn't necessarily giving us anyone really access. Whipple is going to be able to tune some stuff, live under this and that. Right. Devices, or who knows what HP tune is going to come out, this and this, that. What do you see in the next year or two where Lund Racing will be tuning older stuff because S650, but let's say it does become tunable, let's say 21, 22, 23, F-150 are tunable, all that stuff. Where do you see us? Are we pivoting? Are we looking to release new products? Like, what is it that you see in the next year and a half from Lund Racing?
So we'll just say 2024, because I have no idea what's going to happen in 25. I am looking forward to the new is it a Cobra that's coming out?
I think it's some kind of Cobra variant.
Whether it's
a Shelby or a 850 horse. Look, in my opinion, it's probably going to be a Whippled Cobra with 800 horse with badging and brakes.
I think it'll be a Predator.
You think it'll be a TVS?
I think it's because they have that Roush relationship.
Yeah, but
it'd be sweet if it's a Whipple.
I haven't seen a Roush blower in a Ford unit. It's been a Roush labeled vehicle.
Or it'll be it'll be Eaton based, right?
Oh, I see what you mean. Like a proprietary blower, a Predator based, similar to the GTD, where that power plant. Remember that road race car that like they make 200 of?
Yeah, right. That's $400,000 or whatever.
Useless car.
Yeah.
Do you think something like that, but in a street version? Is that something that you think is going to be a thing?
I think it's going to be a stick shift car. So yeah, right. It'll be an affordable version. So it'll be
120, 135. Yeah.
So
what world do we live in? Oh my God.
But I'm looking forward to taking that out and putting a Turbo 400 in it. So
right, because to this day, GT500 haven't really gone any quicker than 860 with a DCT, and that's no tuning on the horizon. Nothing, no semblance of even any support.
Right, and that market I think is starting that it's in the infant stages of shifting towards something else. So I won't speak much on that yet, but that's probably what it's going to turn into, which I'm fine with. But that still requires some stuff for shutting off, TCM related things, to like keep the dash happy for those customers. Or is it going to
start the car, like to even
start the car, right, without having to have the little knob thing and the
But in terms of what Lund is offering, or what you see us working with, let's say a 650 isn't tunable in 2024. Like what?
Well, I'm not going to go into super crazy detail because I don't want people to like blow our inbox up, but it's going to be, we're looking at stuff, and I know you've mentioned this already on one of your YouTube live streams, and we are just hoping that we can release it with a little bit of success in 24 so that it picks up some traction and that it will help the customer have a more desirable experience that seems engaged like.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
I mean, based on the
yeah,
I know what you mean, but let's say that I think that's going to be massive. But like you said, the rollout has to be similar to when you guys introduced Engage. Remember when you introduced Engage?
Yeah.
It was, and you had Greg, you, and another guy, and that's it. and then shipping, and it was like psycho, and you had to literally throttle the business back to be able to not be buried under the avalanche of orders. I think it can be something similar because of the desire to have something similar. No, the desire to have something, a user experience that is more desirable. Let's just say that, right?
And it's not like it's groundbreaking. So it's something that people will probably be familiar with, and it has room for improvement in the future. I'm hoping,
right.
It allows us to have a little bit more range of what we're doing in terms of process internally, because it relieves us time. So that's what I refer to as range. Like the time it takes to deliver the calibration is cut down, which gives us a little bit more of a better experience, which helps us provide a better customer experience. So I think that 2024 is that. I think that it's probably the future in terms of what we're, latched onto.
Right.
Because there's nothing else really on the horizon.
Right.
Funny thing is, like, we still had a killer year with,
I was blown away. I was blown away when I'd show up in the morning and I'm like, where are these orders coming from? And then obviously, things have happened in the industry where people drop off and this and this and that.
Yeah.
But
we're in an economic recession technically, right? So,
right.
And we're still making money, which is it's a blessing in this industry, in this economy.
Right.
2024, I think, is going to be similar, and I can't be mad at it. Like I used to, I forget who I told. I think it was my mom or my dad. I said I used to be in this position where I felt like we had to like constantly make Lund Racing bigger and wider and just keep, just blowing it up. And I've kind of like stepped back from that a little bit, and I'm more like wanting to fill in the gaps a little bit more, as I think that in this industry you can't not talk about it. We are limited in this industry.
Yeah.
The way that things are continuing to go, we are going to be limited. So we're kind of like having to fill in the gaps of what we've already touched, and maybe we'll start to spread a little bit wider on that stuff. But I still think we're going to continue to make money, and we're still going to progress. So does that mean we'll start doing a bunch of standalone tuning? Maybe not in 24.
Maybe not, right? Maybe
it could. Like, what if the S650, in order to do what you want to do with it, you got to put a standalone on it?
Then we have to take classes on standalone stuff and support that.
Maybe not, though, because if you do it with Motec, you're just going to kind of pick up where you left off.
You're right. If Motec is the only way, it would be at least more familiar to my eyes, because right now, even dealing with HP tuners and other software we've dealt with in the past, I did have trouble. Like, where is this? Where is that? Yeah. So if Motec is laid out in a way that makes my eyes happy, I'm happy. Could you imagine, and without getting into super detail, I think only you and I would know what we're talking about, if LRS took off?
Yeah.
Nobody knows what we're talking about, but if we had that system in place, 2 years ago, you thought of it? Imagine the user experience. Imagine the convenience. Imagine the control in the hands of the user, the customer.
Yeah.
One day we'll dive into that, I hope, but maybe not. I don't know if there's some kind of NDA or some kind of weird shit that we can't talk about.
I think the way the NDAs work, I think if your last name is on it, you're allowed to break it, but I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, so, no, that's a good.
But I haven't. I went into detail, like, very lightly on Cooper's podcast.
That's why I brought it up. That's right, because I wanted to expand on it.
I didn't name the name of it, but it like.
I didn't say the whole name. I just used the acronyms.
It would be more possible with what we're currently working on, but it's not really like at the top of my list yet because of how much has to go into it. And then we're still, like I said, on his thing, we're reliant on the tuning product that we're building the tuning file in order to assist with it, because ultimately that's where the database lies. and it's really like heavily relied on that. So
I see what you mean.
I
Yeah.
mean,
So that,
in basic terms, it's like automation, right? But that's just very basic because it's way more complex than that.
yeah, it's insanely complex. And in theory, if you guys knew what it was, you would have wanted it yesterday. It would have been pretty revolutionary for this industry. Not a lot of people were thinking of it or even anything like that. But to make something like that, a product like that, innovative, highly technical, and the user has control. Like the user has a decent amount of control. I think a lot of people would have freaked out over it, but you know, maybe it can be revisited one day, or like you said, something else can be delved into along similar lines, or not. It just dies forever, and it sucks because something like that is a great idea. Like imagine if Elon Musk had the idea to start, you know, Tesla, but because one motor mechanic was a fucking retard and didn't do his job, he couldn't start Tesla.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, imagine what it could have been versus what it is, and you're like, the possibilities. Like, do you ever does it keep you up at night ever? Tonight, it might keep you up tonight.
It may keep me up tonight. I mean, it's twofold though, really, right? So like that mechanic that
I wish
only
people
worked
knew. I wish
only worked 50% of the time.
50%.
50%, yeah. It's him and unfortunately the engage, right? So like losing the engage kind of like nosedived it. And now it's kind of like, well, we could, you know, rekindle it, but it's going to require sharing some of that technology.
At this point, I'm like, fuck that, you know, like, nah. It's like, unless we have 100% control.
Yeah. I think that we're back in that zone where it's like we're having to prove ourselves a little bit again in certain places. So, which is fine.
Because we will.
We will.
Like we will. We're like, okay, here, this is what we can do. Oh, y'all can do this? Yeah, we all can do this. And we have a unofficial mouthpiece over there talking shit. And if anything pops off, he'll defend you or bury you. Yeah, whichever. So, yeah. No, I think there's more positives, and I don't think there's many negatives at all if you were to look at it as a business decision. And I can't imagine people would look at it as like, what's the downside of dealing with Lund Racing in any tuning capacity? In any tuning capacity, if you were, let's say, Ford, right, and you wanted to sell control packs, you wanted to sell anything. Like imagine
they still recommend us.
Who? Lund? I mean, Ford?
Ford Performance for the control pack says go to Lund Racing. I'm still hearing it.
Unofficially?
Unofficially, like someone emails and says, where do I go for a tune? They're like, why don't you hit up Lund Racing?
That blows my mind. I didn't know that. Like, what? Yeah. So why not we don't need everything. We just need a little bit of, like, imagine if Ford needed to sell Godzillas. Like you said, if Ford needed to sell Godzillas, they're not offering you a $26,000, 600 horsepower Mecha Dukazilla, like whatever the fuck, them dumb shit. And I'm like, your regular Godzilla doesn't sell. Yeah. What do you think this thing is going to do? It's going to sit. So I'm blown away that they would recommend us unofficially, but not want to work with us because there is no negative. How can working with Lund be a negative? If it's a product you got to sell, we can push it. We have the volume, we have the loyal customer base, and we do have a lot of experience with this stuff. So yeah, does it still blow your mind that some people still tiptoe and balk or say they were going to fuck with you, then don't fuck with you in this industry?
It does. I mean, it's like, did that happen to Carroll Shelby, like way back in the day?
Boy, you know, I
haven't really researched it, but I know he was kind of looked at as like the black sheep a little bit, right?
Until he wasn't. Until he was old and crusty, and he was welcomed back in with open arms because I think he wasn't a threat back then. You know, meaning, let's say during his peak where he was building Billy badass stuff and working with people and had a good, let's just say, group of people around him that built badass stuff. He took his shit to Dodge, built an Omni and a Dakota Shelby truck. Like, so, and then when he was pretty old and really didn't race anymore, they said, we like the name because the name now means something, as opposed to, we want you to engineer some stuff. And it's almost like he's like, well, I'm old now at this point. I'm just gonna, who cares? I'm good. But while he was at his peak, Ford, whatever relationship him and Ford forged that went away, didn't come back right away. He was doing a bunch of other stuff until he came back in an older age. And he was already old when he started messing with Ford. He was a retired racer, had eye issues, heart issues, whatever. And only when he was older, imagine right now, nobody fucks with you, but the Lund name is so badass that when you're 70, they say, hey, you want to come in and we'll do a Lund edition Mustang. And you could be salty about it or say, fuck it, my grandkids need a good retirement, or my kids need to, who cares? Right. And I think that's, I'm guessing, but based on what I've read, there are a lot of redactions in his history when it comes to his dealings with certain manufacturers. It
was bittersweet then, basically.
It had to have been, because imagine if you have the keys to the castle, like the keys to the castle, and all of a sudden the keys go away. Why would they go away if things are good? Maybe the economy took a shit. Maybe the 70s hit and nobody wanted to buy muscle cars. I get that. And he said, all right, well, I'll just go to Dodge and build 4-cylinder turbo cars because I think that's kind of cool. And they were kind of cool. For the day, the Dodge Omni was quick. But why would you let go of a name like that? And why in the modern age, and I'm not saying this because I work for Lund or kissing ass, who is the aftermarket OEM top dog for Ford? It's Lund. For Dodge, it's someone like a Ripatune, someone like that who is pushing that platform. So I wonder why they wouldn't reach out and say, you guys are doing the baddest shit. You guys ran sixes. You guys win prestigious races. Why wouldn't we want to work with you? And I'd love to work with them. Also, let me ask you a question before we end.
Okay.
And be honest, and you will not offend me.
Okay.
If Ford said, we'll fuck with you, but Alex has to go, does that make it worth it? No, I'm not saying forget feelings. Fuck feelings. Alex's rhetoric is a little tough, is a little abrasive, and we want to be kosher. We're corporate here. I'm sure I'll be, Ricardo Gonzalez on the books, and I'll still tune. But in name only, not in a physical sense, would that be considered or considerable to say, we think that relationship is valuable, but we cannot get rid of Alex physically, but we will take him off the books? And I would agree to it, because if it's that important to Lund, is that something Lund would agree to? Or would you say, yeah, we can work out some kind of situation where you're like, employee number 008 as opposed, because people have said it on my chat, Alex, if the situation came up where they had to get rid of you, quote unquote, to have Lund come in, is it worth the trade-off? You will not offend me if you say, yeah, it'd be silly not to look at some of that stuff.
I don't know. That's tough because you were with us when we went to the Sky booth. And
I was there, and nobody. See, thanks for saying that, because I didn't say that.
Yeah,
I don't pop off and say I was there.
Yeah,
but I was.
You were sitting right there,
right.
And I think you were the only one with us, right? So it was me, you, and Senior.
That's it.
And you were with us when we went to the HP Tuners booth.
Correct. Sure. We heard some shit there.
Yeah, right. So I personally don't think that I would tell them he can't go, because you were there and they didn't say anything then.
At all.
They didn't say anything then. Either they didn't know who you were or they don't really care. So I don't think that it's a
request I don't think would happen, but it is a funny hypothetical if they're like, we don't want negative press. Alex,
you would feel great if they said that. Like,
dude, it would be like, yes,
I think you would be like, I will. You'd be like, take me, put me as Ricardo.
Yeah.
You would probably force us to.
I'd absolutely make you go, guys, you have to do this. You have to take it. I'm still working. I'll be, but, and then I'll publicly say, yeah, I don't work for Lund. I don't care. And I fell on the sword, Harry Carey, and make sure that Lund got the files they needed and the support from the OEM.
That would probably be the only way you would buy another Ford, is if it was Lund edition.
If I somehow was able to manipulate Ford into the Lund camp and make it all a synergy and it happened, absolutely. If there is a Lund edition car, F350, 15 speed, I don't give a fuck. I'm in there. Fuck it. All right, John. Let's end it there. We've been on for 2 hours. I appreciate that. I know you're a busy guy. I know you got a family. I know you got a lot of shit going on, but I thought it was a good idea to get a little bit of a State of the Union going, because we haven't done it for a while, and kind of let people know what's going on our end of things. And we'll probably do these quarterly or every half year or so. I still have to talk to Senior and stuff like that. So I really appreciate you coming on and hanging out with me for a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Always a good time.